The metallic hum of the space station corridors never ceased. It was a soft, almost hypnotic sound, a constant reminder of the machine heart that kept the station alive. Yet, amid the rhythm of maintenance bots and the chatter of alien engineers, one figure moved differently. Her name was Lyra, a slender figure with pale, almost translucent skin that seemed to shimmer faintly under the artificial light. Her eyes, large and violet, carried a depth of thought that often made others uneasy. Lyra had been assigned to the orbital research station only a month ago, yet she had already become an object of whispered unease. Rumors swirled about her uncanny ability to predict system failures before they happened, or to understand complex alien schematics instinctively. Some said she was touched by the station's core itself, a being too strange to otherworldly to belong. As she walked down the corridor toward the engineering bay, most crew members instinctively stepped aside. The whispers followed her like shadows. "Why does she always know?" One would mutter, "Do you think she can hear our thoughts?" Another would reply. Lyra did not acknowledge them. She had grown used to the solitude, though the loneliness often pressed on her chest like a heavy weight. She arrived at the engineering bay, cavernous space filled with wires, screens, and hovering maintenance drones. The air was rich with the scent of ionized metal and lubricant, comforting in its familiarity. Lyra set down her toolkit and immediately began analyzing the core diagnostics. Her fingers moved with precision, her eyes scanning holographic schematics faster than any AI could process them. Despite the efficiency of her work, the room remained silent, everyone else keeping a cautious distance. The other engineers, a mix of various species, exchanged glances and deliberately crowded around each other's workstations rather than near her. Hours passed, and the hum of the station grew louder, as if echoing her isolation. Lyra's work was flawless, every system she touched responding perfectly to her adjustments, yet she could not escape the invisible barrier between herself and the others. She longed for conversation, for connection, yet feared intrusion, for every attempt at friendliness had been met with polite avoidance or whispered gossip. It was then that the human arrived. Humans were rare on the station, almost mythical in their ability to adapt to anything. This one was young, with short brown hair and warm brown eyes, wearing a standard engineering suit that seemed slightly too large. He moved with a casual confidence, an ease that immediately drew attention despite the crowded bay. Lyra noticed him instantly, but she kept her eyes on the schematics before her. The human walked past a cluster of engineers who were busy pretending not to notice him and stopped beside her workstation. Without a word, he pulled up a stool and sat down. The room went still. Conversations halted mid-sentence. Every eye subtly shifted toward them, but none approached. Lyra looked at him, startled. Most humans she had read about approached cautiously, often wary of alien social nuances. Yet here was one, sitting beside her as if her presence was natural, as if the whispers that surrounded her were irrelevant. "You're Lyra, right?" he said, voice steady and calm. There was no question, no hesitation. She hesitated before nodding. "Yes, and you are." "I'm human. I'm Caden. I do engineering too." He smiled faintly, not overly friendly, just present. "Mind if I help?" She blinked. She had expected suspicion, hesitation, perhaps even a hint of mockery. Not this, not someone who simply accepted her presence without question, of course. She replied softly, motioning to the complex schematics hovering above the console. Caden leaned in, his fingers moving over the holographic controls with ease. He asked questions, simple, logical questions without implying judgment. He didn't glance at her hands in surprise when she adjusted components faster than he could, nor did he step back when the system responded immediately to her touch. Time passed differently when he was there. Conversations among the other engineers dwindled further into silence, but Lyra barely noticed. For the first time in weeks, she felt her focus balanced with the presence of another being who did not fear her. Caden noticed patterns she hadn't yet caught, and she corrected a few small errors in his calculations, each of them working seamlessly together. The rest of the crew watched, curiosity mixed with disbelief. No one dared approach, but whispers now contained a tinge of awe. By the time the station's third rotation light blinked, signaling the approach of night in the orbital cycle, the core diagnostics had not only stabilized, they had improved. The once unstable auxiliary power grid now hummed with a perfect rhythm. The station's AI logged the change, a subtle alert of efficiency improvements, but no one cared more than Lyra and Caden. "You're good," Caden said, leaning back slightly. "I didn't expect that. You're incredible." Lyra felt a faint blush warm her cheeks, though she quickly masked it. "I've always worked alone," she admitted. "It's simpler." He nodded, understanding without prying. Sometimes, though, working alone means you don't notice small things. Mistakes humans make often show when you're not watching. You saw things differently. For the first time, she laughed softly, a sound rare enough to make a few crew members glance in their direction. Over the next week, Caden continued to sit beside her. He never pushed her into conversations she didn't want, but he never retreated either. Slowly, the atmosphere around Lyra shifted. Other engineers began lingering a little closer. curious about the dynamic between the human and the alien engineer no one wanted to approach. One day, a small emergency shook the station, a coolant leak in the secondary reactor. Lyra had identified the problem immediately, but the repairs required simultaneous coordination between multiple engineers, a task nearly impossible with the crew still hesitant around her. Caden didn't hesitate. "We do it together," he said simply, looking at her. "We fix it, step by step. You lead, I follow." The trust implicit in his words astonished Lyra. There was no question, no doubt, only collaboration, pure and simple. Together, they navigated the maze of pipes and conduits, each anticipating the other's moves. Lyra adjusted the cooling flow, and Caden rerouted the auxiliary power without instruction. The reactor stabilized and the emergency lights faded. The rest of the crew watched in amazement. Lyra, who had once been avoided, now moved with a quiet authority, not by demand, but by respect. Caden's presence had bridged the invisible gap that had separated her from the others after the crisis. Lyra and Caden sat together in the bay, wiping sweat from their foreheads. "Thank you," she said simply, her voice quieter than usual, filled with genuine gratitude. "You didn't need me," he replied softly, but there was warmth in his tone. "I just didn't want you to be alone while everyone else hesitated." She looked at him, truly looked at him, and for the first time, she felt seen not as a strange anomaly or an object of fear, but as someone who belonged. Word spread quickly through the station. Engineers who once whispered behind closed doors now nodded politely as they passed her. Some even began to seek her advice. Not everyone, of course. Old habits died slowly, but the change was noticeable. Lyra's world had shifted, not because she had done anything differently, but because one human chose to sit beside her, choosing presence over fear. Months later, the station's AI noted a remarkable improvement in productivity, maintenance. The schedules were optimized, repairs completed faster, and team cohesion had increased dramatically. Caden and Lyra continued to work side by side, their synergy unmatched. The other engineers gradually followed their example, some tentatively, others eagerly. Lyra's isolation had ended, replaced by connection and respect. Yet, Lyra never forgot the moment it changed, when Caden had simply sat beside her without hesitation. It had been the first step in breaking a wall of fear, proving that humans, with their strange combination of curiosity and courage, could see beyond appearances. She often thought about how easy it had been for the others to avoid her, how simple it was for fear to dictate behavior, and she realized that courage sometimes was as simple as offering companionship on the quiet of the engineering bay. As the station drifted silently through the void, Lyra finally smiled without reserve. She had found a companion, a partner, in logic and intuition, and in doing so, she had found a place where she belonged. The hum of the station continued, steady and constant, but now it was joined by the soft rhythm of laughter, conversation, and shared purpose. Lyra no longer moved through the corridors alone. The human engineer beside her had changed everything. No one avoided her anymore.